This is me trying to figure this stuff out. When I ask for help, this is the guy helping me. A lot of times, I don't know what you're talking about. This is not a programming video. You have to write code to do that. This is not a tuning video where we achieve the optimum performance on our e-bike. I'm currently making a video on that. This is simply an input video to the settings and the parameters of the Fardriver and what functions to use. This is your initial setup to get you rolling. But before we go out in the garage, we're going to need to get a couple of apps downloaded. I didn't find either of them on the Play Store.
Oh, I can get it on my phone? Okay, I can get it on the computer too? Alright. Then once I get it on the computer, do I just print it? Do I print the app?
I just searched the Morgy BMS app, and there it comes up like that. Boom. So the app downloaded. It's that little blue alien guy right there. Same with the Fardriver. I just Googled Fardriver app. Went to the website. There's a new app for the new Android, and if you're using the Bluetooth dongle, and it says it's the most new, but I think there's a newer one. You'll keep getting a request to update the app. And when it's on the phone, it's like that little sprocket down there. It says Fardriver in the lower right. Before we walk to the garage, it's story time with Ted. So there is a document on the Fardriver. Yeah, it's in Chinese. Now, way back in the day, Moses pretty much wrote the Bible. Let my people go. The slaves are mine. Their lives are mine. All that they own is mine. He was the OG of giving power to the people. So the Bible he wrote was only in the hands of the church for a very long time. And the people didn't have access to it. If you had an issue, you would go to the church or talk to a priest. But it was really up to them to translate what the Bible meant to tell you what to do and give you direction. And that gave the church a lot of power, probably even more power than the king. So in a big boss move, King James has the Bible translated to the king's language. Gives the power to the people. He lets everyone have the Bible. That puts him now more powerful than the Pope. So the issues is that Bible was translated from Old Hebrew into Greek and Latin. From there, it was translated into English. Quite a bit of mistakes were in there, quite a bit of interpretation. And that's kind of what we got going on here. I've got this Chinese manual, and the guy that wrote this is probably this smart. Someone translated the Chinese manual, and they were probably this smart. Then I come along somewhere down here on the curve, and I'm reading the manual. So yeah, there are some mistakes in here, but we're going to try the best we can. See if I can Bluetooth to the battery. The ANT BMS. Open that up. Pairing. Pair. Here's one that says Bluetooth. We'll hit that. There we go, device list. Now it says connecting. I have to now activate my Bluetooth again. Oh, there it is. Let me connect that. Pairing. Boom. Enter the pin to pair with BMS. Couldn't pair. Alright, so I went to device list here. Device scan. I got these things. There's a Y on, Q off. I think that's my motor. There's the GoPro. Here it is. ANT Bluetooth right there. Confirm. Connected. Boom, there we are. So my battery's at 79%. It's important to have a full battery, so I charge the battery up. And that's why you want to check it on the ANT before you calibrate this so you know exactly what it is. And we're going to Bluetooth to the Fardriver next. To do that, turn the bike on. If it's your first time connecting this thing, you might hear 7 beeps in a row. That means you have the wrong temperature switch signed, or that means the motor temperature is overheating, when it's really not. Don't get worried. You can go in there and change that. We have to hook to the app first so we can control it though. So we open our Fardriver app. Once you do the initial time, it'll just connect automatically, like your JBL speakers and stuff. But the first time, we go to this page here, kind of like the home page. Bottom right, hit that, COM. And our motor's on there. Y on Q FOC 452, that's us. So that's what you would press. If you didn't see that, you would hit scan. So here's how it looks when you come up to the fresh screen. So you'd hit the scan, there it is. One Qua FOC motor 452. That's what we want. So we'll select that, we'll hit connect. Mine says owner connected, it already knows me, but typically you would have to tell it to bind with it. Please select a bound service. If you still can't get it to connect, open up your Bluetooth, do the scan thing, the 1Q FOC motor right there, bam, pairing, done. That's gonna give you better odds of success, and we're connected. After you get connected, go to the graph page, and here you can see your motor. The temperature is one of the first things you want to look at. It's 2827. Now let's say I had the wrong temperature in there. I'm going to go ahead and put it in real quick. Okay, so when you first turn it on and you hear this sound, it's 7 beeps in a row. That's going to be because your temperature's off. Let's look at the graph. It's showing me at 177 degrees. This thing has a warning at 160. It turns itself off. So I've already reached this warning. It won't turn itself back on until 140. So it's giving me an error right now that I'm overheating. But that's wrong, obviously. This motor's cold as a garage and it's the same temperature as the controller over here on the left. If you look on your data sheet for your motor, and you can usually look online on the website, it'll have a little data sheet for it. And it's going to tell you what temperature sensor to use. It's going to tell you the number of poles you have. It's going to tell you the rated power of the motor.
We're going to damn sure give it a try.
Things, because the Autolearning is not going to pick up some of these. We're going to have to put them in there manually. So let's manually go in here and put that temperature in here to solve this. Go to parameters, go to Pro, run down here to temperature sensor under parameters, and let's get that KTY83-122. That was what my motor said it should have, and the beeping stopped. Right now you might go into Autolearn automatically since it's the first time you turned it on. You'll get 2 short beeps, 1 long beep. You need to have this downloaded. If you just do a search online for Fardriver controller beep, I think it's as far as I got, is beep, and it'll pull this page up. And you want to have this online. This tells you all your beeps, what they mean, everything like that. A lot of videos you see, they tell you to put all this stuff in here before you do it. I think you can pretty much get this thing going right now. It won't recognize the rated power. You can add that. It usually does not recognize pole pairs for me, but it's going to recognize the rest of the stuff that's important. It's already got 96 volts. We can just go right into a self-learning. But if you do want to put the pole pairs in first, like everyone says, on that Pro page, hit pole pairs. Don't worry, we're going to go through all these pages. We're just getting the bike set up. So I'm 16 poles, that's what my document says. My rated power is 20,000. And I have to put that in manually. And let's run a self-test and see what happens. So for the self-test, go back to that simple mode, and then from there go to the graph page. You'll have a little button down here called Autolearn. Press that. When you press it, it's going to give you the 2 short beeps and 1 long beep. At that time, you can give it the throttle. You're going to hold the throttle open, wide open. The wheel's going to go forward, the wheel's going to go backwards, and then it's going to come to a complete stop. When it comes to a complete stop, it's going to give us another beep. That means you can let go of the throttle. The Autolearn sequence is done at that point. So let's do it. I better jack up this wheel first. I have no idea what's going to happen. That thing could just take off. Turn it on. Enter self-learning status, yes. There we go. 2 short beeps, 1 long beep. We open the throttle. Just hold it all the way open. 2 things are important here. One, that you hold this throttle all the way open, because there's some settings it's going to use for safety, for runaway throttle and things like that. You don't want to let off that throttle at any time. It needs to read what your max throttle is. The other thing it's going to do is it's going to determine the back wheel speed based on voltage. That's why we wanted our battery completely charged. And it's going to give us a rated wheel speed. And it may not be what the manufacturer says. The manufacturer told me this wheel was good for 1,670 RPM. I may get less than that. That 1,760 might be with field weakening. This is without field weakening. This is your max rated speed that this wheel was designed for. And it's going to detect that and give it to us, and that's a good number to keep. So let's go. There it stops, goes backwards. You might get a throttle error in here. Don't worry about that. Let it come to a complete stop and beep. There, your test is done. Let go of the throttle. So my self-test is done. I've got a check mark now. The throttle error went away. So I'm going to bust through these parameters. Some I read in the book, some didn't make sense, some I ask online, on the forums, some I'm making up. If you know of any that I don't know, someone that you think is legit that knows and I've got it wrong, yeah, let me know that for sure. This video is long. It's geared for the novice or new Fardriver user. Some of you pros out there, you're going to look at this and go, oh, those aren't the settings I would use, or I don't agree with that. That's all right. This is just to get the new guy started on understanding this Fardriver. I'm going to index it in the description. You could jump right to the area. It'll be more of a reference guide because it's such a long video. So in my quest of following my hero's footsteps, give the power to the people, you can easily become a false prophet. I don't want to be these guys. It's my interpretation of this book. Problem with it, I don't know if I was right or wrong on it. All the research I was doing, all the Googling, all the endless fear, all the chat forum, Facebook pages and groups, I couldn't find any 2 people that agreed on what did what. When you're talking about technical stuff, if there's 2 different answers to something, then neither answer is right. Only the correct answer
is right. And when you have a correct answer, you only have one answer. There's no disputing it. There's no arguing it. So I had to make the assumption that all my information was wrong.
From the home page here, which is the simple page, most of this stuff we're going to be able to do in the Open Pro NBLE. At the top, you can see it's connected. We've got the 96 volts, 20,000 watts. It's got the proper ND, 1800 it's showing. Got the line amps and phase amps that I assigned to it for max. Motor reverse direction, we do have that. If you look at my motor, everyone online I saw the motor was on this side, the disc brake was on the other side. That was, I thought, the way to do it with the wires coming on the left. But apparently that's reversed because I'm using reverse direction to get my motor to spin the proper way. That's kind of interesting. So that's already selected. Autolearn figured that out for me. Rated voltage, it should have already detected 96 volts. Low power current mode, we're going to get into that on the Pro page and what these mean. Energy feedback, this is for your electric brake button up here if you have one, or your brakes that are hooked to here, or if you want to do throttle brake. And that's your adjustment for those, but we're going to adjust them on the Pro page. 3-speed parameters, just notice it has the gear high power. It's the only place you can really adjust if you want to bring it down, which I don't know why you would. That'll make sense when we get to the Pro page and I'll show you. But on the Pro page, you only have middle and low gear adjustments. So that was under 3-speed parameter. Then we have functions. There's a whole list of these are also on the Pro page. I think there's more detail on the Pro page, but this is a lot of your basic functions. A lot of this stuff we're not going to have on these motorcycles. It's for club cars, tractors, things like that. You know, cruise control, obviously, we're not having that. Park function, they're just having it as a simple on or off on this page. There's some adjustments on the Pro page. We'll talk about all this stuff there. Auto return to park, high speed, push ACC, we're doing 11. That's line 3 speed. We'll get to that on the Pro page. The only thing I have is regenerative braking. I do have that enabled because I have the button up here and it auto-detected that during the self-learning stage. Seat function, assist roll, side stand, gear, park, and TCS function. That's traction control system. It'll give you a choice of asphalt road, muddy road, things like that. I thought reverse would be on here because for some reason the motor is not going in reverse when I press a button.
Alright, so that's not like I thought it was on the reverse function. I hit the reverse button, I got the little R on the display, but I didn't think it was working. I thought the back wheel would go. I've got to actually hit the button while I twist the throttle. And when I twist the throttle, it goes reverse. And you'll see it goes into R up here. And then you give it some throttle, and it goes backwards. Make sure your kickstand's up for that one.
So this page is pretty much done. Very simple page. We're going to go to the Pro page for our settings. You get the same heading up here. It's got your controller. It's got what your basic inputs are, line and phase. And we'll go right down to parameters. Angle detect. You can see the choices here. You're going to get this assigned to your motor during the Autolearn. And this is the Hall sensor. It's 120 because it's a 3-phase motor. All the phases are 120 degrees off. So that's the right one. The Autolearn should detect that. Temperature sensor. We talked about that, and we got that set to what my spec said, KTY83-22. You'll need to put what applies to yours, and I don't think that's a temperature sensor in there. I just think that's what calibrates to it. Phase offset, 209. We're okay within 2 degrees of that. The hub motor should be 30 degrees, 210 degrees, or 90 degrees, and I'm showing a phase offset of 209. That's 1 degree off from 210 degrees where I think it should be. Autolearn sets that up for you, and they probably did that because it was a little bit better at 209. We can adjust this in a couple of degrees, but I'm not going to worry about it because I'm going to trust what the Autolearn did on that for now. We'll get into this adjusting this later. The reason I want to skip it is because we're going to come back to this with the LM adjustment. Pole pair 16, the auto detect did not learn that. I had to go in there and assign it, and here you don't put in what you want. You only have certain choices. We know we have 16 because that's what our data sheet said. Motor direction 1.
1 is the reverse direction that we're using, and 0 would be the other direction.
And here's a good one. Rated speed. 1382. That's the one we talked about. I was told this motor does 1670 RPM. The Autolearn said it's doing 1382. The Autolearn's smarter than my data sheet on this because it's using RPM of the motor and voltage to determine this number. So I'm going to stay with this number. I'm going to consider that my rated speed, and that's important. And that's okay. We're still going to go 1670. We're going to go 2000 RPM on this motor. This is where field weakening happens at 1382. If I have too big of a number assigned in here, let's say I put in my 1670,
470 like the manufacturer said, then I'm going to be pushing too many phase amps into that motor at too high of an RPM, and it can damage it. So I want field weakening to happen above 1382, and it will as long as that's set as my rated speed. It's not my max speed, just the rated speed. Now rated power, Autolearn has no idea, so you have to put that in yourself. Mine came up with I think 12,000 watts, and I had to put 20,000 watts. It's what's on your spec sheet. Max speed, I think it put 3,000 in there. I'm on Autolearn, but I put 2,000 in there. If you do your speed calculator to your wheel size, I'm not going to be going faster than that. Now this max speed does limit your motor speed. So the higher the speed above 1382, because that's what I have set, the more field weakening we're going to get, all the way up to 2,000. And this is going to happen automatically between the fixed speed and the max speed, the 1382 and 2,000. When it comes to field weakening, we don't want to go above about 50%, what they call 50% field weakening. That's a 50%
Of the speed expansion of the motor, or RPMs over rated speed.
Now, when we're talking about field weakening, we're talking about phase amps. If I'm sending so many phase amps to the back, then I only want 50% of that, no more than 50% of it, even less during field weakening. But I'm going to determine that through RPM. So let's say I want to go 1670.
1670 is 288 RPM greater than the fixed RPM of 1382, and 288 divided by 1382 gives you about 20% field weakening.
And that's good. So yeah, that'd be fine. If I tried to go 3000 RPM, that would be 115% field weakening. That's obviously bad. So this is going to help us determine our maximum RPM that we want to use. 2000 RPM, which I have selected, and the math says it's only 43% field weakening. So 2000 RPM would be a safe RPM goal for this. So that's why I put that as my max. If you want to know the exact RPM at 50%, which 50% is considered safe for hub motors, and you can just take 50%
Times your rated speed, which would be 1382 in my case, would equal 691 RPM. Then add that 691 RPM to your rated speed again, 1382, would give you 2073 RPM.
The technical maximum RPM we'd want to use, but 2000 is close enough for me. That's how you determine your max speed. Back speed, that's just whatever you feel comfortable with. I have it on 100, that seems to be the standard. That's still pretty darn fast backwards. Max line current and max phase current. These are the good ones. Max line current is what your battery can give your controller. Now I thought I had a 670 amp battery. You can usually multiply your line current times 3 to get your max phase current. Even if I conservatively had a 500 line amp battery, that would put me at 1500 to the rear. Obviously your controller has to be able to handle these amps too. You might be limited by your controller. Now I've got a 800 line amp, 1800 phase amp controller. So my controller is not my limiting factor. My wheel is not my limiting factor. My battery is. So let's look at that battery and see what's going on. Amp BMS. So when we buy this battery, the assumption is I got a 400 amp continuous, 640 amp peak, and that peak is for 10 seconds. That's what I was told. But I don't actually have that big of a battery. I just think I do. So it says connected. And down here at the bottom, parameter set. Current parameters. So what I actually have is 400 amps, and there's an Overcurrent Protect at 400 amp. The Overcurrent Protect delay is 5 seconds. So if I'm over 400 amps for 5 seconds, I'm going to get an Overcurrent Protect. So definitely not getting to 640 here. Discharge Overcurrent Warning, 400 amp. You can see the 640 amps is on there. But what I've got is 400 amps for 5 seconds. And that's adjustable. The next one down is 640 amps. And then I've got a circuit protected 550 amps. But down here, discharge overcurrent warning at 410 amps. So the way I read this is if I go 400 amps over 5 seconds or 410 amps, I'm going to get that warning, a discharge current warning, and the battery will give it protection at 400 for 5 seconds. So I don't think I have a battery that I think I have. Now I've Bluetoothed this battery just by plugging it into the charger. You can either plug it into the charger or turn your bike on. Either way will work. So now let's hook to the bike. We'll turn it on and get into our Fardriver app. Let me go into parameters. So I've told this bike that I want 470 max line amps. So I'm basically telling it that I have more amps than I actually have. I only have 400 amps. If I go over that for 5 seconds, I'm done. So I need to reduce this to match my battery. I could go change my battery to match this.
This could take a whole separate class
on this ANT BMS. I want to just cover this part of it so you know how to set up your max amps. And we're talking about line amps here. That's all the battery's concerned with is line amps. Phase amps are going to your wheel. They're going to be a derivative of line amps. So we're just concerned with line right now. Think of this area here as your continuous power area. Think of the next area as a temporary power area, kind of a transition. And think of this area as your maximum limit. So you can see they've got 400 for 5 seconds, a temporary of 640 for 1,000 milliseconds. That's 1,000 milliseconds as a second. They've got 550 for some kind of, 12,000 US as microseconds. That's tiny. That's instantaneous as a limit. We can never actually get to that 640 because we got a 550 in there. They just installed the BMS assuming I was going to set the parameters, which I'm going to do now. So my battery's good for 400 amps forever and then 640 for 10 seconds. That's what I was told. But I want to be very conservative. I live in Florida. It's hot. I don't really need 400 amps. 300 amps is crazy fast. Anything above that is almost not usable, it seems like, but I do want to have it on hand if I need to drag race someone. So I'm going to set my max continuous to 320 amps, but I'm going to put a time limit in there. So it's 30 seconds. It appears like I can only do 320 for 30 seconds, but that's not true. Once I go above 320, I'm limited by the temporary power, and I'll set that at 550 amps. That's still plenty safe. When I go above 320, or if I go above that 30 seconds, it pushes me into the temporary power window. So above 320, I'm limited to 550 amps, and I get that for 30 seconds. When I exceed that 30 seconds, I'm limited to 550 amps. I have 1 second in that window before it protects. Then, if in that 1 second I happen to spike this thing somehow, I want to have a cap on this at 600 amps. So at 600 amps, for 1 microsecond, it'll self-protect. 551 amps, it'll self-protect in 1 second. I can do 550 amps for 30 seconds. And that's the parameters I'm going to put in there. So that's conservative, but still fast. Now we know how to go and program our max amps and phase amps. Now we know what our battery can give us, and we might adjust what it can give us, but what do we put for max line current? In our case here is we want to put the max we're going to use. We're going to be able to limit this line current. We're going to be able to limit it down here in ratio in gears. And we're also going to be able to limit it on that front page. Let's go to simple mode. We can even limit the high gear output. Button number 3. So I can limit all my gears. Just how much do we want in gear 3? If you look at ratios in gears, they only show you low speed and middle speed. High speed is, we're setting it right up here. So we're setting high speed right here, max line current. That's our high speed. But what if you want to use boost? Well, it's going to give us another option down here to go boost line current. You can even go more. And boost phase current, you can even go more. So we're not going to limit our boost with this up here at max line current. We're just going to limit gear 3. Or we're going to limit, if you don't have gears, we're just going to limit your bike. So figure out what your battery can do, and you may want to reserve that, your maximum battery, where you're stressing your battery out. You might want to reserve that for your boost current. They'll have a limit on that. You might want to put a 10-second limit on it, and we'll talk about all that later. But it's up to you what you put for that line current. It just has to be within the specs of your battery. I'm going to go ahead and even be more conservative than I did for the BMS. I'm going to set my max line current at 500 amps. Now I know I can exceed that. If I stay at 500 amps forever, I'm going to trigger a protection because I'm asking it to do more than I told the battery it is allowed to do. So that puts me in that 30-second window. But I'm going to use 500 as my absolute max, and I'm going to limit it with the speed switches. We'll get into that in a little bit here. So we'll say 500 amps, and then 500 times 3, we're talking about 1500 phase amps. Now that's my absolute max for my 3-speed switch. Throttle response. They give you choices, sport and eco. Most people like sport. I kind of like eco. Maybe it's because the motor's too big. I think it runs better. Throttle ACC step. They don't have choices up here. You just have to type the number in. But the range is 8 to 224. The higher the number, the faster the throttle response feels. Motorcycles typically are 64 to 128. And then if you're like in a drag race, let's say, your motorcycle, you're going to be on the track a lot and you want a real on or off type throttle feel, then you're looking at 128 to 224, kind of in that range. For just street riding, I don't like that feel. It's too twitchy. So I'm going to go with 180. Kind of still in that race mode, but you want it to feel responsive. Boost line current. I don't have a boost switch hooked up, but let's pretend I do. This is where we're going to get that 4th speed. So I set the max power at 500 line amps, 1500 phase amps. But I know I can go all the way to 600 for a millisecond. So I can get above 500. So let's say I want to make my boost and I want to use that. I want to use that power, 550. So right here, 540, and that'll put me in the 30-second window. So I can run 540 for 30 seconds. It's important to know this because we're going to be able to adjust the boost. This boost is like a video game. It's hilarious. It's just like Grand Theft Auto. And we're going to be able to adjust how many seconds we're in there and then how many seconds we have to wait till we can hit boost again, just like on Grand Theft Auto. So you can like punish yourself as long as you want. So we know we're going to put 540. Once you press that boost button, let's say this is the boost, you got 30 seconds to play around in there. If that's what we set. We can set whatever time we want. That's a setting further on down. 3 times that, 1600? Doesn't matter. So we can set this higher than our maximum current and maximum phase current. Now my boost isn't on right now because it doesn't detect a switch connected to my pin inside the controller. If it detects that pin is connected, then it will come on and you'll have boost. Right now I don't have boost. So I can put those numbers in there and they won't really affect me at all. Phase exchange default is 0 or no exchange or 1 exchange. Let's go to the simple mode here. When you look at your graph, you've only got 2 phase currents you can see. Phase current A and phase current C. Well, there's another phase in there. This is a 3-phase system. So if you want to view that other phase, you can actually switch the wires. Phase exchange 1 is if you swap the green and blue wires. So if you swap those on your controller, I were to take my the green wires on the blue pin and I just flip-flop these two, that would be a phase exchange. You would have to select 1 so the controller knows it, and then from there you could monitor this other phase. Eco ACC, I'm going to guess that word means coefficient. It's set at 8. That's where the default is, and it's for economical accelerating. Not really sure what it does on adjustments. That may be something you have to play with and see what you like better, but the book doesn't really address it. Weak character. This has to do with your field weakening. And remember, this is automatic. The preferred is fast, and that's right out of the book. If it feels kind of jittery, you can go to medium. But if you use slow, you'll get overcurrent. The more phase amps you're going to pull. For speed on the phase amps, you want to turn that motor quicker, get more RPMs. That's what our goal is with it. So we would select fast, because when you select slower, you're pulling more current. Weak response, I've got mine on 5. You got a scale of 0 to 6. And the scale is backwards on this. 7 is off, 6 is the least, 0 is the most. There's a 0 down here at the bottom you can pick. And so 1 would be high, 0 is the most. It goes backwards than what you think. This affects your speed expansion. The speed expansion is when you go past. We push the motor past that rated speed, 1382. When we push the motor higher than that, up to 2000, we're going to be using this weak response. There's 2 ways to increase speed on a motor. You can either add more voltage, or we can use weak magnetation, and that's the field weakening. And you can actually increase the RPM at the same volts, but you're reducing torque, so the wheel can spin faster. It's kind of opposite of what you think in a car. Fields weaken by reducing current flow and angle on most motors, but this is a FOC controlled motor, FOC, that's field oriented control. And this controller is FOC. So it'll change the current vector, it'll adjust that, and it's done in the controller. And that's how it's going to weaken the fields. You got throttle, DEC steps. So this is the same thing like when you were adjusting your throttle kind of sensitivity on acceleration, but we're doing it on deceleration. 16 to 224 is your range, and the bigger the number, the shorter the return lag. The auto thing put mine on 128, I'll keep it. Throttle release, 0 is the default, and they've got different settings here. They don't go into what that is. I'm just going to leave it on the default of 0. Throttle low and throttle high. For a motorcycle, it should be between 0.8 and 4.3. The low should be 0.2 volts above idle. Idle is what your Autolearn is going to do. If you get that too low, the thing will just start driving on you while your throttle's off, so you don't want it too low. That's why they say have it 0.2 volts above idle. In a lot of videos, you'll see them just say as a blanket statement, put it at 1.1 and 3.9. That's just the math the book derives from the settings that it was given in Autolearn. All these throttles are going to be different though. Let's say the range is on mine 4.15 for the high, and I think it was 4.25 4.15 is what Autolearn put on there. But we'll pretend it did 4.15. So if it's 4.15, that means that's the highest this throttle will go. That's the most volts it puts out. And it's a 5-volt throttle. So it's putting out between nothing and then 5 volts. But 4.15 was the highest that the controller saw in Autolearn. The controller has a safety off feature on your throttle, and it's 0.6 volts above the highest setting that it Autolearns to. So if I was 4.15, then at 4.75, this thing would turn itself off. It was seated as a runaway throttle. It's still within the 5-volt range, but the computer says it went to 4.75. We got a runaway throttle, he's turning it off. The next section is ratio and speeds. This is all about phase current. That's the current going from your controller to your rear wheel. And this is all about your field weakening. So these percentages you see on here are my percentages of phase current that I've assigned up here as my max. Now I told it I wanted a maximum of 1500 amps phase current. But depending on what gear I am, down here in ratio and gears, we can change this percentage also. We'll get to that in a minute, but it does change with the ratio and gears. But we'll go ahead and say I'm in gear 3. I'm running 500 amps, 1500 phase current. Now I'm saying to give this wheel that maximum amount at these RPMs, 100%. Let's say your bike takes off so fast that it spins out, or you live in the ice or a gravel road and you don't want it spinning out like that. You can reduce the phase current at these lower RPMs and make it take off more gentle. You might even can do that to do a better drag race, and you keep just doing burnouts and you're wasting your time. Then you might want to lower your phase current in these low RPMs until your wheel hooks up. But generally, all the stuff down here below the fixed RPM of 1382 can be 100%. You may not want it there, but it can be 100%. And then anything past that enters field weakening. So when I get to 1375, 1500, I'm in the field weakening zone. I need to lower that down. I don't want to be above 50% of my power. If I have 100% above my fixed RPM of 1382, then I'm adding too much torque on that motor in those higher RPMs. Adding too much torque can actually slow you down. It can actually bring the RPMs down. So here you can see I've dropped mine down 40% at 1500, 40% at 1625, 1740, then I go down to 30%. I'm making this up. This is all your tuning. We're just talking about setting the bike up, not really tuning it right now. And 2000 RPM, I've got 20%. Of course, I think I'm going to limit my bike to 2000 RPM, so I could even have that lower. I could have that down to 1%, because this is where I want the bike to stop turning, and 0% above that. And this is all for gear 3. When I go to gear 2 and gear 1, I'm going to limit even these things here. I won't get 100% at 500. I won't get 90% at 1000. I'll get a percentage of that I set. But if you try to give this motor 100% phase amps above its rated speed, you can overheat it and damage it. All right, below that we have LD, and I've got 900 on mine. I didn't set that. Default is 900, and it's got a range of 200 to 900, and that's the electromagnetic noise. There's a thing called torque ripples in electric motors, and they make what they call electronic noise or electromagnetic noise. You can adjust that to try to get that out of there. I don't feel it. I don't know if I would feel it or even know what it is. So I'm leaving mine at default 900. LQ 329. This is a signal from the throttle between 1 and 4 volts, which is usually 2 volts or 2.5 volts if you're going all the way to 5 volts. It calibrates what half throttle is. The self-learning knows what no throttle is. It knows what full throttle is, but it really doesn't know what half throttle is. This LQ number tells it what half throttle is, and this was a default number on here. The range is 0 to 4000. It gets pretty microscopic on the range. Those are in millivolts. So 1000 millivolts is 1 volt. So right now what I've got is 0.329. That's 0.3 volts. That makes no sense to me because my throttle's not even on. So I may play with that and see if I can set that somewhere between 1 and 4 volts, like 2000 millivolts. And that would give my half throttle speed. So the first issue was I would twist the throttle quite a bit before it would even take off. So that dead space in there I wanted to get rid of. I don't think it was all just cable slack. So that's why I lowered it to 0.8 volts. And that seemed to work. It takes off good, but it's almost like I have to get it about right here to take off some more to get it to going. Barely takes off, then it's like, okay, come on. There it goes. So I think my half throttle is set too low. And we look at that number, what was it, 326, that's 0.326 volts, that's true. So we need to increase the volts up to around 2 to tell it where the half throttle is, I think. We're gonna try that adjustment. we'll see what happens. So here I have it, some throttle. Now we can see the display on the graph page, how much throttle I'm adding. I'm at 0.75 at idle. So yeah, 0.8 might be too low for my idle. That's only 0.05 difference. I could get a glitch and just start taking off. So right, there's 0.8. There it goes, about 1 volt, it starts moving. And it stays 1.2, 1.3 volts. It doesn't increase that much, 1.3. So I think I'm gonna move that number up. And those are millivolts. Bring it up to 1. So 1000, that's 1 volt. Now that change will take effect if you want to play with your settings. That change took effect in there. I haven't saved it yet, but it did take effect. So I can see if I like it. I'll have to, of course, write it for real to see if I like the feel of it better. But I can already tell it got rid of that dead spot. So that dead spot's gone now. You can tell with a lot less throttle. FAIF, and this is set by the firmware. This is, mine says 128, that's just a number. It's a general hull characteristics. There's a chart in the book that shows different numbers for different characteristics. And I forget what this one is, but it doesn't really matter. It's what I have in the firmware. Speed limit, to limit your wheel RPM, to in turn limit your speed. A lot of this stuff is available for people who buy these controllers and they're putting out a product to sell the entire bike. So if you're making a moped that can't go over 30 miles an hour to be legally classified as a moped, then you need to set the speed limit on that wheel to limit it. There's several ways, but here they give you the option of limiting by speed. I put the speed limit at 2000 RPM because I'm gonna go to that speed limit anyway. Ratios and gears, here's a good one. So if you notice, high speed is not listed. It lists low speed, line, amps, and low speed phase amps. Mid speed, line amps, and mid speed phase amps. The high setting is when you're in button 3 and you're not limited by anything. That would be these original settings up here where I put the 500 and the 1500. But of course, if you want to go above that, that's when you go into boost, 540, 1600. So without these limitations and ratio and gears, we're just on button 3. Now on the simple page, you actually can adjust the high and you can bring it down. The high gear power output, you can bring that down as well as the speed. And that would be the combination of line amps and phase amps. So even though I might have 100% selected gear 3 here, it may not show 100%, or it may not show the percent you have on here because we were setting this limitation based on line amps coming from the battery. I just did a mathematical formula to get the phase amps, or I might have left them at 100%. So when you look at simple mode, they're going to be different because they're using a combination of phase and line amps for this. You don't have a choice. It's just have gear 1, how many percent, gear 2, how many percent. So I like this pro mode better on this. Now how I'm doing this is, I told it I have 500 amps from the battery. I can't run that all day long. That's my button 3 amps. I can run that for 30 seconds, then I'm done. So button 3 is just kind of like for maybe racing someone. I'm going to make button 2 where I can have max continuous power, drive all day long. So here if you look at the battery settings, even though I assigned 500 maximum amps, I've only given it 320 amps max continuous. And then I gave it 550 for that 30-second window, 600 max. So if I want to drive max continuous forever with no issues in button number 2, then I would take my 320 that I've told the battery that's the limit and divide that by 500 because 500 is what I'm telling this program that I want as the max. That's only 64%. So to drive all day long without any issues, I can only run 64% of that 500 to keep me at 320. So let's do that on medium, and then I'll put 64% on phase. And then here's where I'm going to limit the speed. I'll go with 2,000. Now 2,000 on a 20-inch wheel takes me to about 113 miles an hour. I don't see any reason to go faster than that. If I was doing a quarter-mile race, I might want to go 130 miles an hour. So that would be 2,400, I think, to get 130. You can do a wheel calculator and figure that out, wheel speed calculator. We know the low speed is going to be 2,000 also for the RPM max. I've got to figure out what I want for low speed. Now low speed, I've found that I like about 260 amps is real nice for driving around. It's got good economy, it's got good range. Even 250 amps is fine. I assigned my max 500, remember? So 250 divided by 500, that's 1/2. So I'll assign this 50%. And this would be my economical driving. Let's say I'm driving around and I hit that 50% max. I hit 250 amps and I get there. When you get there, you can just keep on adding throttle, nothing happens. It's like a speed limit is on, it's like a governor. So it will not use more amps than that, it will not use more phase amps than that, than I've assigned it. And it'll just hold that speed. And I've found with about 250 amps, I can do pretty easily 70 miles an hour still. And I'm just full throttle at 70 miles an hour. If I want to go faster and worry less about economy, I can jump into button number 2 here. And then I'm good all day long. And if someone wants to come along and race me, I go button number 3 and I'm good to race them. So that's really 3 speeds. Low, number 1, number 2 is middle, number 3 is just whatever I put in the top. And then that 4th speed would be your boost. And it says in the book that, yeah, button 3 is subject to max phase and max line current. If I use maximum power in there, I'm limited to 30 seconds. But I may want to limit myself in boost to more around 10 seconds for maybe just a quick drag race with a lot of power. And I don't want speed limits with this power. If I'm going down a hill or something like that, I don't want to limit my speed. So I'm just putting 2,000 as a speed limit. The next section is regen. So you can have that signal to make your regen come from the brake wire or from letting off your throttle, which sometimes they call a throttle number 2. If you ever see that term, throttle number 2, that's your regen. When you back off this throttle, it uses the same steps and volts that counted you up to give it more power. It uses the same steps to count you down to regenerate power. We set the regen up here in this energy regenerate category, but if you go down to functions, you're going to be able to turn it on and off and tell it what to do, whether it's going to be throttle or button, but we're going to set it up here. The controller just knows that the brake is either on or off. Usually these micro switches you hear are hooked up to your brakes, and that would turn your controller brake on. They also have an option to have your brake come on when you let off the throttle. That to me seems like a scary option. I wouldn't want that. And if I want engine brake, I'll just press this button here, and that does the same thing as this micro switch would do. When I hit that button, you can see right there the little brake symbol comes on, pops up there over the battery. That can be powerful enough to slide that back wheel. Start out with some little numbers and then go bigger and bigger until you get it where you like. The max back current is generally 25 to 50% greater than this stop back current. The stop back current is default set at 2 amps. Between 5 and 20 amps is your range on that. You typed in yourself, but 20 amps on stop back, 20 times 0.5, that gives me 10, plus my 20 is 30. So that puts me at 50% greater, so that's within the spectrum. I'm not even going to be using max back. It's not going to happen. I'm just showing you how to set it. I'm only using stop back current. The max back is your throttle chop or return brake. That's just going to be with a throttle, and there's a couple of settings for that we're going to get to. But I'm just using the stop back. The BMS has a max of, it's actually 32 amps. I was told 40, but here it says 32. So yeah, 30 amps is putting me right on the edge if I was using the throttle, but I'm not. I'm just using the 20 amps here, so I'm good. And that 50% rule is only if you're using the throttle. If you're just using the button, just worry about stop back current. Rated battery capacity, the Autolearn will not know that. You'll have to put that in yourself. So I put 64 amp hours. That's what my BMS told me it was. Free throttle is the brake force you get depending on how fast you come off this throttle. 0 equals a faster return and smaller brake force if you come off it faster. If you come off the throttle slow, the brake force would be gradually more. And there's a number you put into free throttle. You can adjust that with the numbers. And I don't know what the range is on that, and I couldn't find it. Brake voltage is the voltage where that curve for free throttle starts happening, where the braking starts. Mine's set to 0.01 volts. That's pretty low, but I'm not using that. So typically if you wanted the brake to come on when you came off that throttle, you can look on the graph. Mine thinks it's closed at 0.9. I would set my brake voltage to 0.9. Then once that's done, all this applies. Now you can see I've got 50% in all these, and then I've got up higher RPMs 30%. I'm not sure that's even the right way to do it. Some people want lower percentages at lower wheel speed so you don't slide your wheels. I haven't really adjusted this yet.
None of these settings down here apply to the stop back current, and I'm going to prove that to you now.
That's done for regenerate braking, but it's still not on. We have to turn it on. We're going to turn it on down here in functions. So let's go through this function list and see what we got. All right, first thing under function is the boost pin. If there's not a button going to it, if it's not powered, it equals invalid. You can select which pin you want to use, but it'll automatically know. Of course, that's cruise control. So yeah, don't get too wrapped around the axle. A lot of these functions we're not going to use. Remember, these guys make they make controllers for everything from drones to conveyor belts to automated robots that build cars. So there might be a bunch of stuff in here that doesn't matter. Side stand pin, we know those from the old fancy Japanese mopeds. If the side stands down, it won't let you take off. Pause pin, that's if you have like one of the little cars and you put it in drive and you sit there too long, it'll time out. It'll go back to neutral. We've got a forward pin and a backwards pin. Those are if you're using a gear shift. They should be invalid on our motorcycles. High speed and low speed. A tractor usually would have a press button, so you can go in high speed or low speed, just like your lawn and garden tractors, but it's done electronically. Charge pin, that's charge protection. We can use a function. Ours is invalid. Even though we do charge, we charge right through the battery. I've got a thing I plug my charger into right here on the battery. It's not part of the whole system. Anti-theft pin, you could have an alarm that plugs into this thing, and if so, that would show up as valid. There's some settings for the anti-theft portion and the alarm portion. Seat pin, so if you're not sitting on the seat, just like on your lawnmower, your tractor, you gotta sit on that seat, otherwise it won't start. Speed limit pin, that's not for us, that's for one of these other devices. Switch voltage pin, if you have a dual voltage system, you may have a switch for that, and those are usually to do volt limiting speeds. It should be invalid on something with a single battery like we have. Boost time, this is a good one. I'm going to pretend I have boost even though I don't have it. So on my boost, I was going to go to 540 amps. So even though I'm going to use 540 for my boost, I still can't stay over 320 amps for more than 30 seconds because that's what I assigned as 30-second limit. But that gives me to 550. So when I'm running boost, I can be in this 30-second range up to 550. For my gear 3, I put 500 amps. So that's even above gear 3. And I know that 500 amps I'm limited at 30 seconds also. I have to do that on my own. But for boost, I want to do a quarter-mile drag race. I just want to hold it on. We'll make it 11 seconds. Duration defaults to 45 seconds, and you can go anywhere from 1 second to 131 seconds max. We're going to get a cooldown time. Boost release is how long do you have to wait to be able to hit that boost button again. It's a max of 131 seconds again. So now we have 11 seconds of 540 amps. That repair pin, I couldn't find a description on it. It's invalid, we don't have that option. Then the high-low speed. I've got number 11, line 3 speed. That's my little switch up here. 1, 2, and 3. That's what I've assigned. You could also just press a button and go in high speed, maybe for a shift car, go into low speed. There's all sorts of different options here, but I'm going with that line 3 speed. The Autolearning auto-detected that. I didn't have to figure that out, which one it is, because some of these sound familiar. P-U-S-E-R-E, invalid. No idea what that is. Empty run, no idea. Slow down. And now I'm on button 1 if you notice. Default is button 2. Too big, you could get a vibration. This may have to do when you're coasting to a stop. If you have kind of a vibration when you're coasting to the stop, you would go to a smaller number. I mean, I've already got a pretty small number, and it's what it defaulted on. Gear, it says default D. That's what we want. When I turn my key on, it's already in drive. We don't have neutral or anything like that. Add throttle and it goes. Brake 0, stop when ground. I think parking brake stuff. PC13, race response and normal response. I've got it on normal response. Park 2, disabled. That's where you press the brake pedal to put it in gear. The important one for us is this one, follow. So we go to follow. It can be disabled, and that means no regen braking is going to happen. All that regen braking stuff we did up here in this area, we're now going to turn it on. Select number 2 when brake is valid, and that's what I've got. I want it to come on when brake's valid, when I've turned the brake on. Number 3 is when you release the throttle. If you watch the current meter, if I give it gas, it adds current. No gas, 0 current. If I hit regen braking, you see nothing. Now let's go back and change that setting. Follow. Now I'm going to go electronic brake system when brake valid. Try it again. Throttle, I hit the button, and yeah, look at that. There's the negative current happening. On the brake, off the brake. EABS when brake, number 2 for follow, if you want to use a button brake. The next section is a display. Now I've got a DKD display. Now there's so many ways to calibrate your speed, it's crazy. So we can calibrate it with the display. You can mark your wheel with a piece of chalk, mark the ground where that is, roll it back till that mark hits again, mark the ground. Measure that with a tape measure. That's your circumference of the wheel. Convert that on Google to millimeters. We're gonna need that measurement. And I'm using 1499. With the 2 buttons on the back, you press the left button for 10 seconds, then you press the left button to adjust the parameter, then you press the right button to go to the next digit. Go back to the left button, do the parameter. Right button to the next digit. When you get all the digits you want in, hold the right button. It'll go back to this page here. You're gonna have to get a feel for it. do it and get a feel for it. This is the only instructions you get for these displays. And you can Google it all you want, and that's all it comes with. But there's a list of passwords to do certain things. You can turn this thing from drive. I think it will go reverse. Let's see, yeah, reverse drive. You can turn that off. You can change the amount of volts in here. I can't figure out how to get this trip from trip to odometer. You can change kilometers or miles an hour. 153. And this is going to give me my wheel measurement that we did, because that's what I measured mine at in centimeters. Now when you hold the left button down, it's going to go right to this. That's 16 pole pairs. I think that second number is supposed to be 0.8. The first number is pole pairs, the second number is offset. I can't Google what offset is. Nobody knows. It's a mystery. Speedometer looks pretty calibrated now. 21, 21, 20. I'll have to go faster and see what it does. 35, I got 37 there. That's a little bit more off now. So I need to assign my wheel to be bigger because I'm actually going faster. But we also have speed pulses. The speed pulses are for the one-line or one-LIN. I don't know, I'll call it a one-line, I'm not really sure. If you increase the number, that increases the speed right on the display. Your numbers are between 1 and 31. I've got it set at 8 right now. We can calibrate that. We can also calibrate the speed from the next one, speed pulse number. That number's a calibration for the speed pulses, so it gets even more fine-tuned. For a hub motor, when you do the auto learn, it defaults at 40,459, so 40,459. You'll see mine, I got it at 8,800. You can put whatever number you want in there. I was just playing with it. You'll hear people say 11. That's false. You can put whatever you want in there. You just basically move that number till your speed calibrates right. When I did the wheel circumference and it was right, I think I was at 8 and 6,600.
That speedometer is right on. 51, 51.
Next one is voltage. Mine did not self-learn the voltage. 856 is the code. And there it is, 96 volts. You can change that up and down. You don't actually select the digits, it goes through the voltages. The next one is 974 for kilometers or miles an hour, self-explanatory, put the code in. Okay, speedometer pulse and then analog speed coefficient comes off like the CAN bus or something like that. Doesn't apply to us. The CAN, it's a command number. I think that's if you have the CAN bus display. Torque, Coeff, default is 8192. And for some reason mine's at 720. I don't have a display that shows torque, so it's not gonna really affect me. Step 1, 0.9. That's gonna be one of these three. 0.9, 1.5, or 1.9. And then there's a fourth choice. They're kind of confusing how they do these. There's a fourth choice down here, 0.5, and that's choice 0. My one-line and the Fardriver auto-calibrated that, so I didn't have to worry about it. It knew. Stop 3, these are in milliseconds, and you get 3 choices again, or actually I should say 4. Mine defaulted to number 3, 216 milliseconds. I don't think my display even uses that. Special frame should be on 16 for a one-line connector. It auto-detected that. Pulse, 0. There's a reference table for this data, and you would use the reference table to know what to put it on. Mine actually knew. It auto-detected it. And data 1's the same way. You're going to refer to a reference table, and mine knew to put 97. I didn't put that in. These numbers will be in that table. I didn't have to mess with them. Everything worked fine. When I got down here to Byte Options, I used Byte Option 6, started displaying the amps right here. I'm putting 400 line amps out. This is times 10. There's a times 5 option, but times 10, there's 110 amps. Current Coeff. Mine had 64. Now, I don't know if you can see the display, but when I take off, and there's like 400 amps already, but it's actually only 40 amps because this is times 10. It's almost useless to be that low scaled. You can change this, and I put mine around 8. We'll save that. Now, when I watch my current over here and I watch my amps, it's all scaled better. 100 amps right here, I'm getting about 100 amps on the scale. So now that 100 amps is the 1 on here, 1,000 amps would be the 10. These are just line amps. Now when I'm pulling 400 line amps, I'll see it up here at the 4. And then if I get over that, I'll know I'm getting over my 400. And it doesn't use up the whole scale that way. Downside to that is I'm only braking with about 20 amps. So now when I press the regenerative brake, it brakes, but you don't see the amps come up on the gauge because these are scaled so low. If your regenerative braking is more important to you, yeah, keep that times 10 and you'll see it on the 1 and the 2 for like 10 and 20 amps of regenerative. You would leave all these SEC numbers at 0. so they're invalid. This is only for the display, so it's not gonna really matter, but your gear ratio is 1:1. Yeah, it's a hub drive motor, so there's no gear ratio. This is so if you're changing sprockets on your mid-drive motor, you can not have to set all these settings different. The wheel ratio 70, wheel size 12-inch wheel width 120. That's your profile of your tire. You look on your back tire right here, 130 by 70, 12. You can put those in here. I don't think they're doing anything. That must be a different display that uses that to calculate it. Next section down is the protect section. Got the over voltage. I googled a bunch on for a 96 volt battery, what would the over voltage protection and under voltage be. I didn't get anything reliable. Kept getting different answers, but luckily they have a chart in the Fardriver book. It said to put 84 volts for the low protect. When you do that, it automatically puts a restore for you, so that's when it comes back on. So I'll put 84 volts like the book says, puts it right up to 86. The overprotect, I can't change the darn thing. It doesn't even give me the option. The motor temp protect, it was at 160 was the kickoff, and it comes back on at 140. So I lowered that to 140 and then kick it back on at 120. I honestly haven't seen over 70 degrees on this motor yet. Controller temp protect also, and controller temp restore. 100 degrees and 80 degrees. It defaulted to that. I figured Fardriver did the Autolearn. They must know best, so I left it at that. As far as the zero battery Coeff and full battery Coeff, that's the range on your battery where you can adjust those numbers and move it up and down for what you're seeing on the graph page. Right here it says 88% battery capacity. Mine was not very accurate out of the box, so I adjusted that. And time to charge this battery. Now if you see, my battery bar is full there, and I have noticed on the graph my battery is only at 82% capacity, so it's not showing a full battery. Click. I think this is actually accurate. I think it's my graph page that's off. You can see I'm showing 107.6 volts on the graph page. Full Batt Coeff, and it says 1250. Let's go to 1000. Let's see what I get. I paused while I did a bunch of different numbers. I got it to say 100%, but I don't know how high that could be, so I wanted to do it till I went 99% since I know the battery's full. Looks like 1150, and of course this will be different for any battery out there. This is just my battery. If I look at the graph now, a battery of 99% capacity, so that should be more accurate. I'm at 107.6 volts. Yeah, I've noticed squirrels don't get out of my way. They don't hear me coming. Now when I got back to the house, you can see now it has one bar, one white bar. Maybe the battery like recovered a little bit since I'm not riding it, but it was flashing red on me while I was driving it. I've got 11% capacity, 87 volts. That's actually probably about right. But if it wasn't right, and here it's 896 for empty, so let's say the battery was all the way empty like I thought it was, then I would probably change this number to bigger or smaller to make the graph show empty also. But right now it's saying 11%, and I don't know, that's probably about 11%, so I'm going to keep it like that. Throttle lost is either valid or invalid, or the alarm is something that comes up on the Fardriver app here. I don't think you'd see it on the DKD display, and I guess if you lose the throttle, I'm not sure if it shuts this thing down or not, it just tells you, I think. Throttle insert, I could not find what that is all about. I've got it on 256, that's just where it was. Back to park, that's a time, doesn't apply to us. You can see it's a range of seconds. That's if you like put it in drive and you wait too long just hanging out, you don't forget and get out of the car and it takes off driving. It'll go back into park. Park time is, it's got a max of 132 seconds. You'll see it set for 10 seconds here until it will cancel parking. On electric motors, you can use the magnetism to hold that wheel in place. That's how they're parking these things. If you leave it parked too long, it's going to run the battery down. So it'll either overheat the back wheel because it's taking a lot of power to hold it in place, or it'll time out, one or the other. Speed start and limit speed minimum. These are 0 on mine. We don't want this. This is like making things for an easy takeoff so it doesn't like burn out, I guess, or maybe a lawnmower, so you can adjust the amount. Turtle speed, I think that's for their lawnmowers that have the little turtle and rabbit on them. Battery signal, I selected lithium battery. I thought that's what I was supposed to put, but if you notice it has a one-line option. That's 0, so I might should be selecting that. I'm not really sure. Low volume way. This is an under voltage protect. Think about it like limp mode. There's a lot of selections here, and there's a chart that tells what all these are. So +2 means when it's 2 volts higher than what I set, 84 volts, as my minimum battery, the power will start being reduced. It's at 86 volts, I'm going to get a power reduction. You can also set it based on just battery capacity. If it's a SOC, it's not based on voltage, it's based on percent. The battery capacity that you select for minimum, it's going to start reducing the power. I just left it on 2, the one it defaulted to. INT-RES, that's battery internal resistance, and they've got it on 264. You'll read the default on this as 8, and so it's kind of confusing. Well, why is it 264? But you have to look at a chart. You add 256 to the measurement of the second throttle brake voltage, the regenerative braking. With a default of 8, you equal 264. It actually came up with 264 on its own. I didn't have to do anything. Temp, Coeff, and that's, you can calibrate your temperature. PID parameters. AN here, this is the motor type. It doesn't give you a list, a drop-down list. 0 is a hub motor, what they call a surface mount motor. An IPM motor would be 16. The LM, see I'm on LM22, that's the acceleration matching parameter. It adjusts the smoothness on takeoff. Typically a car default is 22 and a motorcycle default is 18. Mine was on 22. But I'm going to try to adjust it and see if I can get it smoother. You would adjust this if you get response vibrations at low speeds. The large number is safe, the small number is not. Because the smaller the number, the smoother it may get, but the poorer current control it has. Poor current control can quickly build heat in the motor. So you want to go down until the jittering, they call it, stops, and then maybe back up one number. Take off real slow and just kind of listen for some grumbling in that rear end. And then it goes away, it smooths out. Set that lower. Let's try 18. Sounds about the same to me. So we'll try 16. This sounds worse to me. Let's go up one. Let's go to 24. Since I started on 22. See if that sounds better. I think that sounded better. Let's try 26. Okay, sounds this. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. It kept going. I'm just gonna go back to 22. I think that was my original settings. I don't think that made a damn bit of difference. Save that. Now let's try the other method where we go up here and do the phase offset. So I'm at 209. I'm gonna go down 5. Let's try 204. Okay, see if that sounds better. I think it might have sounded better. Let's try 200. That probably sounded worse. So Autolearn looks like it got mine pretty close. Start KI, start KP, mid KI, mid KP, all these things here. There's a chart for them. They say use the chart. Don't just willy-nilly input your numbers in there. Don't try to self-adjust this. They say that's very important. It's a risk of burning up the motor with poor current control. When I use their chart, I didn't know if this was a high-speed motor or an ultra high-speed motor. Apparently it's a ultra high-speed motor. That's what SIA told me. So I'm going to adjust mine to 223 because they told me that's the ones to use. I think it was ultra powerful motor. That's it. Or just high power motor. They consider this is a 20,000 watt motor and they're considering this an ultra high powered motor. Maybe the high powered motor is the 8 to 15,000 watt one. I don't know. It doesn't say. I guess when you go to 2, it just defaults to 0. But yeah, I don't have a way of changing these KP numbers. I can only change the KI numbers. So the speed KI, they have 9 there. They're saying for a heavy car, use 18. That's the max. For something light, 2. The default is 9. Well, I would think this bike is light, so maybe I could put something smaller in there. I won't change it just yet. So it's the same for the P. It looks like the default is 10. The light would be somewhere around 2 and the heavy would be 18 or 20. The P goes from 1 to 20 and the KI goes from 1 to 18. MOE enable. Oh, it looks like I can disable it. It said it's not allowed to turn it off. I think they mean don't turn it off. I think I could turn it off. That's for, over speeds, over temps, things like that. You'll get a MOE error when you get overcurrent or over temp. Curve time, 100 ms. That's the number of milliseconds between samples for the acceleration curve. And I'm pretty sure that's that chart. You look at this curve, gives you data points on there to review. I guess if you know what you're looking at. I don't, but that's how you adjust how many points of data you're going to get. Product, recurrent ratio. That's for your regen or backwards acceleration. They have 32. Default max is 224. Don't want to mess with that because I think it calibrates some of that. FW ratio. and the range is 48 to 80. Default is 64, which mine's on, and that's your weak magnetism and how you adjust the calibration on that. And there is one below it, weak current Coeff, and it's also 64. The voltage select ratio, they've got it at 106. You can use to calibrate the voltage, but not the gauge we're looking at. Alarm delay, that's actually for the burglar alarm. The time settings on it, RE, ACC, not sure. The relay delay, that doesn't apply to us. So if you put the side stand down, or you have to sit on the seat, or one of these kind of things that they've got in there for a safety feature, that's the delay on that. And then relay out is the light you see on the display when the light goes out. BC enable, no idea. Seat enable, that's that seat pin that we talked about when you sit on the seat like on a lawnmower. That turns it off or on. Should be in functions, I would think. Park enable, auto back enable, cruise enable, EABS E enable, push enable. Back enable that's for a backup alarm. Follow speed, 0 RPM. Don't confuse that with your regen follow. That's something different. These are all mainly for customers that need to be able to adjust these settings somehow on what they're selling and what they're assembling and buying. Start LS, that's so you can run the Autolearn without a host being a computer or your phone. You can actually do the Autolearn without having it connected. Temp 70, this is a good one. Temp 70 algorithm is a compromise between performance and mileage. When I'm saying mileage here, it's kind of the life of the battery, the life of the system, taking care of it. Number 3 is performance oriented. It'll let you start at 80 degrees Celsius and still drive. It's performance over preservation of the controller and motor and battery. 0 is life of the battery, motor, and controller are primary goals. It won't start until 50 degrees Celsius. Then 1 being 70 degrees Celsius, and they don't say what 2 is, so I assume it must be something between 70 and 80. Slow down RPM, it's at 320. I think the range is 256 to 1024. It's for if you live in San Francisco, you're going down steep grades, you can use the motor to help you decelerate. Don't get coasting too fast. Then there's a slowdown Coeff between 1 and 7. You can adjust how much the slowdown RPM affects you. The smaller the number, the less the slowdown help. The bigger the number, the more it slows you down. I'm not sure if that works on ours or not. RxD 0, that's set by the firmware for debugging via the serial port. Learn throttle, 24. That's how the system learns your throttle. 23 is the lowest, that's weak. 27 is strong, the highest, don't know what it means. Learn, voltage high, unsure. And deep weak, normal, protocol, 485, that's the Bluetooth connection. The rest of these fixed parameters, we can't adjust them, so it doesn't really matter. And that's about it. SIA Motors gave me a firmware update. They sent me a link. Once you save it to your phone, don't look for it, it's gone. Go back to your app, go over here to COM, go down here to update. Update controller, confirm program version is the same. Make sure those numbers do match up. ND 961800-64-ABH90. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to press update. Update controller confirm program version is the same, and it is, so I'm going to hit update. Unable to locate the file. That's normal. That's where I was getting hung up. So you hit OK. Select a file to upgrade and hit select. And you're going to get a list of these files here. As I went to local files, under local files, I was able to find that file they sent me. And then once I found that file, I clicked on it. It gave me the option to install it. So if you're going to update a file, that's how to do it. Or if you're going to update your software, that's how to do it.